podcaster looking for new ways to grow your show? Are you thinking about launching a podcast and don't know where to start? Are you a podcast guest trying to find the right podcast to guest on? If you said yes to any of these questions, you are in the right place. Welcome to Podcast Your Story. I'm your host, Dr. Julie Marty-Pearson, and I help purpose-driven women own their voice, share their story, and grow their confidence through podcasting. This podcast is all about amplifying women's voices in podcasting by sharing tips and tricks on how to launch a great show, grow your existing podcast, and how to become a sought-after podcast guest. I want to thank my community members for helping to support this podcast. If you're looking for a supportive community of women podcast hosts and guests, check out the Podcast Your Story community membership. In this new episode, I am speaking with Andy Smiley, a fellow podcaster with a podcast called The Friendly Podcast Guide. She helps women grow their shows through marketing strategies on Pinterest and Threads. I know you're going to enjoy this episode. I so enjoyed talking to Andy, and I cannot wait for you to hear our conversation and get some great tips for your own show. Welcome to Podcast Your Story, the podcast all about amplifying women's voices in podcasting. And I'm super excited to bring in a brand new women podcaster to share her story of how she got into podcasting and how she now supports other podcasters to grow their shows. So welcome to the podcast, Andy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Podcasting has really kind of changed my life. Not kind of, it has. It has changed my life. So I love talking about podcasting in all of its forms. So I'm stoked to be here.
And I love that you started with that, because one of the things I always say, either in explaining my podcast or what my business is about, is that I love talking to other women who are podcasters to talk about why they got into podcasting, but more importantly, how it changed their life. Because every woman who is a podcaster I've spoken to, it has changed their life. So I love that that's what you started with.
It's like I was meant to be here or something.
Right. And, I always say it's not that it changed our life specifically in what people would think maybe. Like, we're not famous podcasters. We're not rolling in the dough.
No.
But podcasting is a very transformational experience. And so before we get into how that has happened for you, let's go back to how did you first get into podcasting?
Okay. So we have to go back actually kind of a little bit. So I graduated from university in a broadcast journalism major. So I've kind of always wanted to do some version of this, right? My internship was with a radio show, like a talk radio show. Fell in love with radio, all aspects of it. And I ended up being able to work for that radio station after I graduated. And then my husband and I were like, okay, cool. We should probably start having kids because that sounds fun. So we did. And we had 3 littles while also moving to Kansas for my husband's master's program. And during that time, I knew that podcasts existed. And I kind of fell in love with them as a mom because I could listen to a podcast and have some quote unquote adult conversations with people, right? When I had tiny humans that I was taking care of all day, and it was hard. And so I fell in love with podcasts then. And I was like, I'm going to have a podcast someday. I had no idea what that podcast was going to be about, but I knew I was going to have a podcast. And after I had my 3rd baby, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to have my own podcast. So she was born, and 2 weeks later, I started creating my podcast because, of course, that's the best time to do it, right?
Right.
So, it definitely was not an overnight thing. I started my podcast. I started working on it fall of 2021. And it launched the following February. I think because I was in radio, I was like, it has to have good sound quality. It has to,
Right.
I was way too much of a perfectionist. I really didn't need those things when I was first starting, but here we are. So I started it, and it was so nice to have something that was just for me. It was not for my kids. It was not for my partner. It was just a me thing. And The first iteration of my podcast was helping other moms find podcasts for themselves. And I got to interview other podcasters and have them talk about their podcast, how they got into it, who would be a good fit for their show. So my podcast has shifted since then, but I think someday I will go back to some version of that. But I still am very passionate about helping people find podcasts that they love, especially as a mom. I love helping moms find kid podcasts for their kids too. So that is kind of like my journey of starting. And then not last summer, but the summer before, I switched. And now my podcast is specifically helping women podcasters grow their shows, because truly, kind of like this show, quite honestly, I want more women's voices out there, and podcasting is a great way to do it. But growing a show can be daunting and overwhelming, and I want to try and help it be less of those things.
Right. And gosh, that there's 20 conversations we could have just from that comment alone.
Oh,
Because
seriously.
I think part of it is also because you can do podcasts in so many different ways.
Yes.
That also makes growing it give you options based on live
Totally.
streaming versus recorded, audio versus video, or both. And, there's so many options, it can be overwhelming. But I want to go back to what you were talking about with your first podcast. It's such an important thing, because I think, especially now, there are just so many podcasts and you don't know until you listen.
No.
So if you're looking for a certain topic, to be able to have someone to go to who says, these are the best new mom podcasts, or these are the best podcasts for kids under 3, or, these are the best podcasts for women podcasters who want to grow their show. Like, there's having help in that, I think, is huge, because, as I mostly have been helping people start podcasts, it can be daunting to think about, where do you fit in as a new podcaster? Where are my people? There's just so much.
Yeah.
I think blogging and podcasting and newsletters, anything like that where we can share what we think are good ones and why, I think that is such an important resource for us to have too, because who has time to go listen to all these podcasts to figure out which ones you like? And I say that as someone who helps people start podcasts. And so I think a lot of what you're saying is growing your show isn't always about posting on social media and sending out emails. There's other ways, like you can collab or create space that helps people learn about you without it being so salesy or promotion-y, right?
1,000%. Yes, yes, yes.
So what was it that made you decide to shift in 2024 into helping women grow their podcast? Was there something you had learned? Were you seeing this need?
Okay, so I had my other podcast. I had many women, not like hundreds, but many, more than I could handle at the time, asking me about podcasting. How are you starting a podcast? How do you grow a podcast? All of these questions. So I had a couple of offers where I would help people start their podcast, or help people, I do a consult and we talk through, oh, this is the kind of podcast you have. Okay, here are some marketing ways you can market your show. And that side was starting to grow more, which was fun, but also incredibly overwhelming, because I in essence had two very different parts of my business-y-ness. I guess that's
Totally get what you're saying, as a person who has a podcast about pets and a podcast about podcasts.
Yes.
You feel like you're turning different parts of your brain on depending on what you're working on.
Yes. And for me, I don't have the capacity to turn on and turn off different parts of my brain right now. My oldest, I guess at the time, he was 6. So I had 6, 4, and 2-year-old. And I was like, I cannot do that right now. That is way too much. So after a lot of contemplation, a lot of tears, I realized that I needed to have my podcast align with the business that I was creating. And so I kind of made that switch. But truly, what's been interesting is I know that I have listeners fluctuate, right? Not all of the listeners that started with me when I was talking to moms about what podcasts are a good fit for them. I know all of them haven't come with me along the whole journey, but I know that some of them have, because I'm still interacting with them, because a lot of moms/women who are looking to start a podcast or grow a podcast, they also love listening to podcasts. So I feel like, luckily for me, my listener has been similar the whole time. So that's been helpful for me as far as just talking to my people. But I will say, I feel like I'm always okay, am I still talking to the right person? Have we shifted? Like,
Right.
there's always
Right.
that. Like, let's just double check. Let's take a pulse on who needs me. And
Who
yeah,
hears this and who are you? Where are you? Yeah.
seriously though.
But, that also makes sense to me because I started my pet one when I was still doing career coaching, and I was just kind of like, what is podcasting? And then I ended up having several guests on that show about pets who then I ended up being on their shows because one of them had a show about mental health. I realized as you were talking about, I'm thinking of like my friend Amy, who has a sustainability podcast. I first met her. She was on my pet podcast. There's all these connections. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think one other reason, and I'm sure this is why you may focus on women too, not only because we are women, so we understand other women a little better, but I think there is this connectiveness in podcasting that has allowed so many more women to make connections with other women that they weren't able to access outside of it before this world
Yes.
existed for us.
Oh, totally. I feel like truly with my first version of my podcast, one of the best parts was interviewing podcasters and just meeting people in this way, like meeting people when my kids were taking a nap. I would have conversations with other adults. It was glorious. Or like truly one of the interviews that I did, I was a huge, huge fan. I guess I still am a huge fan of her podcast. And so I just found her email, sent her an email, was like, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. She came on the show and now we're like really good friends. Like we've gone to podcast conferences together and like I'll text her and be like, hey, Whitney, can you please listen to this episode? Something's wrong and I can't figure out what it is. Like I feel like she's my person, right? When it comes
Yes.
to anything podcast related. And that just started because I sent her a cold email asking if she wanted to be on my show. And I feel like it is such a beautiful, like podcasters, especially women podcasters, we're all very similar. And so I feel like we all
Yes.
become friends really quickly. I feel like.
Well, and I think one of the having been in other worlds where it was very competitive, I used to work in higher ed, and even though you had other women who were mentors or colleagues, there was still it was a different vibe. There was still
Yeah.
it wasn't corporate, but it was because, everything kind of works that way. And that's the thing about podcasting. Even when I've met women who have podcasts about podcasting like I do, we can still interview each other and have them on because we're not exactly doing it the same or doing the same parts of it. Even if we're both helping people start, like somebody else may be doing all the production for them where I'm teaching people how to do it themselves, right? So we all have a little difference that what I have found is women are just supportive. Yeah, come on mine. I'll be on yours. Like it's not competitive because we know there's space for all of us.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I think what is so fun is I feel like women podcasters are really good at being like, you know what? I don't have the capacity to help 50 people start their podcast. So I'll do 20. You do 20 and then someone else will do the other 10. We'll find her along the way, right? Like I feel like it's this idea of like there's plenty to share. We don't all have to fight over the same people because we don't all want the same. Like we all have our own people that are gonna like need different things and we need different things from our clients. Yeah.
Right. We all vibe with different people. People vibe with different podcasts. They may not like the way I do mine, but they may like the way you do yours. It's just and that's what's great. I always tell people, no, there aren't enough podcasts because what you're going to do is totally different than anybody else does.
Seriously.
And it isn't about being like someone else or the way other people do it. It's about figuring out what works for you and what makes sense for your world. So I guess with all of those options, how have you kind of figured out where to focus with your podcast, helping people grow theirs?
Okay, I love this question. I feel like for me, it's been what works for me, certainly. Also, what I'm like podcasting as a whole and like marketing trends and like if those marketing trends would work for us or not. Because there's definitely some that it's like, sure, like bro podcasters could probably, send 50 cold emails a week, but no, I cannot. So I have to be like more choosy about the podcast opportunities that I email about. And so for me, mine is very specifically, I help women grow their podcasts in a way that is truly just how I can grow mine, which is like in a way that doesn't take over your life and doesn't take up a bunch of time. kind of like a set it and forget it. Like podcast guesting, Pinterest, Threads is like my favorite social media platform because like you just type some words and then post. Like you don't have to do there's no editing. So things like that are like easier.
Well, and that makes so much sense to me because I even said to you before we started recording, the idea of having to go on all the platforms and then like I have to create this and I have to create a version for Facebook and for Instagram and for LinkedIn and for the blog and for the email and now we have a lot of tools at our service that help us do a lot of that now, but one of the things I often talk about with people, and especially my clients who are launching, is you can't be everywhere all at once.
Mm-mm.
And so when you're launching, you want to figure out where is the best place to focus your efforts. And part of that is figuring out, helping them really be clear on why they're starting a podcast, what's the purpose, and who is it for, and then figuring out based on those things where those people hang out the most, but also where you already are instead of having to add something new.
Yeah.
Or you realize, maybe I don't need to hang out in these places. I need to go over there and just focus there. So it sounds a lot of like what you're talking about you're doing is helping people with those things.
Yes, totally. Because truly, for me, like I have never been on LinkedIn for my podcast. Actually, I don't know if I've ever been on LinkedIn, period. I probably have an account, but like I don't use it. So like for me, my people don't really hang out on LinkedIn, and I figured that out and I don't really use that. And even like with Instagram, I call myself quote unquote Instagram optional because I do like the community aspect of Instagram, but I realized that like I don't get any sales on Instagram. I have not seen any. Maybe there's like a stray download or two from Instagram, but for the most part, I'm not really, like marketing wise, I'm not really getting anything out of Instagram. And so I've stopped putting very much into Instagram because it's not really giving me much back. At least for me. It might work for other people. It does not work for me that way.
No, I will agree, especially in the last year. I'm not seeing any conversion like clicking on a link to listen or clicking on a link even to sign up for a free event. I do think Instagram's become more discoverability, and that is how I learned about you, but it was because someone I follow shared that you were doing something. So it's like a domino effect. But I totally agree because I do not see, even for my pet one, which over 4,000 followers on Instagram for that,
Dang.
it grows without me posting. So I know that that's not
awesome.
a direct, like, it is good, but it doesn't impact it at a level where it's like, oh, I need to be posting anyway all the time because I realize, well, it's still growing and I'm not posting, so that's okay.
It's working.
You have to kind of watch, right?
Totally.
And that podcast has been out for 4 years, so I don't have to do a lot for it to kind of keep going, but to grow it, I'm like, yeah, I need to do something else. And it's not Instagram because I don't see the conversion. So I totally get what you're saying because I've seen a lot of that too. I like Instagram. I find information there. I hang out with certain people there that I get to see what they're doing, but definitely don't see a direct line conversion for my podcasts in terms of posting. And I also think part of that is, and a lot of platforms do this, they're not going to push content that have links for you to leave the platform because the platform wants you to stay there.
It's true.
So I think a lot of it is figuring out what's right for you and your podcast. A lot of that has to do with your content, your niche, who you're speaking to. But one of the things I have tried before with my pet one, and then after kind of coming across you and learning more about what you do currently with Pinterest, I'm like, I need to go back there. So we'll get into Pinterest. But first, you mentioned Threads. Is that somewhere you're seeing conversion?
Yeah. So Threads, the main place that I get email subscribers is Threads for the most part. Threads and Pinterest are like kind of neck and neck. Like those are my two main places that I get email subscribers is Threads. I feel like there are other things in there like podcast guesting. Every time one of my episodes go live that I've been a guest, I usually get more email subscribers that week. But on a normal basis, it's usually Threads and Pinterest are where I get most of my email subscribers, as well as clients. Like one client found me. Okay, this is one of those stories that you're like, Andy, you know how to market. Why did you not do this? I had a thread about Pinterest for podcasters and how awesome it was for me with no link, nothing else. It was just that. One of my clients found it and was like, tell me more or something. I just love Pinterest so much. It's so great because of these reasons. And then she just like Googled it after or something. And then I came up, one of my YouTube videos came up and she was like, she was the one that was talking to me earlier. And then she got my link through, like, she had to take so many extra steps. This is a lesson in what not to do. I can teach you what to do and what not to do, and that is one of them. But so yeah, Threads is actually one of the places that I also get clients, is like directly from Threads. I have a VIP service when I can set up your Pinterest for you and do your first 30 days worth of pins. And one of my clients signed up, and I honestly didn't even know. I didn't even know that she was like on my email list. She had secretly found me in Threads and joined my email list and then just bought from me. And the first time we talked was on the intro call for the offer. It was just like, oh,
Now,
okay, cool. This is fun.
that is not a bad problem to have, I will say.
I understand it's not normal, but yeah.
Notes to myself, more on Threads.
Yes. Well, and truly a lot of podcasters are on Threads, which is really fun. It's just a happening place for podcasters. So
I love that. I do think a big part of what you're talking about is what I've been feeling is social media has become different. Part of it is the world we live in, living in the US, and the ridiculous world that we wake up to every day.
yes.
That a lot of us are sick of seeing that when we go on Instagram and Facebook. And even though we still go there to, check on our people, we don't want to hang out there as much as we used to.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I'm seeing people talk about, the places you can hang out that aren't like that, but that are built more like search engines, which you want to hang out where your podcast and your business are discoverable. And I think in a lot of ways, that's why YouTube has become so big and is now the number one podcasting platform. And so I think what people don't realize is Pinterest is also different and more like YouTube in that way and less like the other social media platforms. So have you always been on Pinterest with your podcast, or was this something that switched when you started the second one?
Okay, so I have been on Pinterest pretty close to when I started. I had a business coach. She was like, hey, Pinterest is a really good place to promote your business, market your business. And I was like, oh, okay. I wonder if it's the same for podcasts. And so I kind of looked into it and I was like, oh, I think it will be. So I tried it out. I started pinning and then it kind of like fell off. Like I fell off the bandwagon. I was like, okay, this is too much. I'm trying to do too many other things. This isn't a good fit for me, right? I need to post every day on Instagram. I don't have time to do Pinterest too. I feel like that was kind of the vibe. So truly, like a year ago, I was like, nope, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to do one pin per week, per episode. It was nothing crazy, I'm going to tell you. But a couple months into doing one pin per week, I was looking at my stats and one of my pins had like thousands of views. And I was like, okay, cool. Apparently this is working. Apparently my people are here. But I will say Pinterest does take a minute. Like it did take a couple of months to like find my people and have Pinterest know who to show my pins to, all of that fun stuff. After that, I jumped up to 3 pins per week. Look at me being so crazy. And I've slowly worked my way. Now I do 1 pin a day, but it's what I can handle right now. And I'm seeing the results that I need to see. So it's working for me for now. Maybe someday we'll up it again, but for now it's been a good fit. I have dabbled in Pinterest roughly since I started, but in the past like year is when I was like, no, this is what I need to be doing. This is a good fit for me. I need to dive into this all the way.
And I think this is good for anyone listening because sometimes you don't know until you try it.
Yeah.
And so I think it is important for people to realize there's no instant gratification on any platform, but you also have to spend a little time to see if your people are here and are going to respond. And sometimes it is that one thing that you do that's like, oh, okay, it's finding the people. So now I just got to do that again and figure out how to do it regularly, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. Pinterest is one of those. And truly, when I say this, most of the time people are like, isn't that how everything is? But I feel like most marketing experts, especially when they're talking about social media, will be like, hey, you just got to do that one viral post or video or whatever, and then you're going to be on the map. You're going to have so many followers. It's going to be so great. I will never say that to you. I'm like, girl, you're going to be posting for at least a month, maybe a couple before you start to see real traction on Pinterest. The one thing that's beautiful about Pinterest, though, is that pins last so much longer. I have a pin that I think I posted 2 years ago. It might be 3 years ago now. That is still like one of my top pins, still bringing in views, still bringing in new listeners to my show. I made that pin like in 10 minutes a couple years ago, and it is still bringing people to me, which is my favorite part about Pinterest, is that your efforts don't go unnoticed, I guess. Like Pinterest is still showing the pin to the people that want to see it.
Well, and I think that right there is a big difference between it and Instagram and Facebook and all those others, because on those, you can post someone and a handful of people see it, so you can repost it again next month and the next month, because
It's true.
that old version isn't getting pushed anymore, right? Whereas
Right.
Pinterest works a lot more like podcasting does, right?
Exactly.
Someone
Yes.
could find an episode from 2 years ago, and then it starts growing. It's that searchability and the discoverability, right?
Yes. Pinterest and podcasts are very similar in that way. Like the evergreen nature of Pinterest and podcasts is so similar. And so they're really just kind of a match made in heaven. And I feel like not enough people know about it, which is literally why I talk about it like all the time. I think I'm worried at some point people are going to be like, she's still talking about it? I'm like, there are still people that don't know. So yes, I am still talking about it.
And I think that is really important, because I will say that I am on Pinterest. I have been on Pinterest mainly for my pet podcast. I want to say like 2 years ago. I'm actually looking at it right now to try and see if it says when I posted these things. Probably 2 years ago. I have like
I love
53
that.
followers, and I have not
Nice.
put a new pin up in at least a year, maybe 2. And I have 54 monthly views. So I'm
Look at
sharing
you.
that to tell people I didn't really know what I was doing. I probably took some workshops. I created pins, and I haven't touched it, but it's still there because I logged into it knowing we were going to be talking. And I thought, that's it. Like, they're still getting views on stuff that I haven't touched. I had to figure out what email it was under to log into it.
Yes, I love it.
So I
Yes.
think, it's the same thing with my podcast. My pet one is my passion project. Yes, it is proof I know how to podcast, but it doesn't directly tie into my business. So it gets put on the shelf a lot because I just don't have the bandwidth. And I haven't put out a new episode yet this year, but people still listen, and I still get on top charts. And, I think I was on a top chart in Australia and Egypt last week.
Nice.
Okay, but I say those things not to say, ooh, I know what I'm talking about, but it's to say that these are these things that you can build, and you don't have to be nurturing every single day. You can put it out there and check on it and add to it, and if it works, then keep adding more. So it sounds like that's a lot of what you help people figure out with podcasts and Pinterest.
Yes. Well, and I will say one other thing, because you brought up that you haven't been posting regularly on your Pinterest. Pinterest is also probably one of the most forgiving platforms. I feel like Instagram, if you're not posting regularly, then Instagram gets mad at you. At least that's how it feels to me. Of no,
Definitely.
you're getting no views because you haven't posted in a week. What?
Yep.
I was sick. Why are you mad at me? Let me just live my life.
Well, and I think that, in the reality of our world and running a business, there are going to be times where I forget to do the thing this time when I have a
Seriously,
workshop
though.
or when I have a new episode come out or whatever it may be. But I think it's really important for people to understand their bandwidth and what they can and can't take on. And sometimes that's a conversation I have when they talk about a podcast. But why are you doing a podcast? Well, everyone's doing one, so shouldn't I have one? No.
Yeah.
Now,
Totally.
podcasts are great, and we both talked about how much we love it and the connectiveness and the community, and a lot of people can gain from that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be having your own. It can be a guest, it can be sponsoring, and all of those things could still be put on your Pinterest or wherever you're hanging out.
Totally.
So, okay, so let's dive into Pinterest, because now I have some examples of my own stuff, but I also don't know. Like I said, I literally haven't been on the platform. And so if someone like me that's coming back to it, what would be your first advice for me to say, okay, before you do anything, let's look at this?
Totally. Okay. So the first thing I would say is make sure you have a business account and not a personal account. When you have a business account, you get analytics, and you want to be able to be like, oh, this pin did really well. Oh, this pin got 0 traction. Oh, so my people don't like that pin. They like this pin. Cool. I don't think with a personal account you can attach your website, but I know you can with a business.
Yeah.
And when you have a verified website on Pinterest and then you link to that website via your pins, Pinterest will send those out more because they're like, oh, this is you own this. Cool. We're going to push this out even more. So all good reasons to have a business account. And it's not hard. If you have a personal account, you can switch it by just clicking a little switch, and then it switches it over.
Okay.
And if you want to keep your personal account, but also have a business account, you can create a business account that's like under the same login too, if you want to like keep
Gotcha.
them separate. So there's that. That's what I would say is the first thing. Make sure you have a business account. And then the second thing I would say is figure out how many pins you want to be creating
Mm.
per week, per month, whatever that's going to look like, because Pinterest does like consistency. But I will say, like I said, when I first started, I was doing a pin a week. Like it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like, okay, I'm going all in on Pinterest and I'm doing 15 pins a week. Like that does not have to be how it is. I would say starting with less is actually a really good idea, because then you kind of get a feel for like the rhythm of creating pins and posting pins, but
Mhm.
also you just don't get overwhelmed and give up. Like a very human thing to do. And so that's the next thing, is kind of figure out your how often you want to do pins, because you can
Mhm.
always go more. Like you can
Right.
always up it to 2 pins a week, 3 pins a week. And truly, I will say, because Pinterest is a more forgiving platform, if you do have to back off a little bit, you won't be penalized ginormously. There will be you'll get less traffic, but mostly because you're posting less pins. So that's kind of just how it
That
goes.
makes
It's
sense.
more of a search engine vibe than an algorithm like Instagram or TikTok vibe.
And a lot of what you're saying is what I've heard about YouTube is be realistic. Not everyone can go from nothing to, a video a day or whatever.
Yes.
But also, like, there is something to the rhythm of posting the same day every week or the same time, or at least knowing that you're building it to be consistent. And so it sounds like, just like with podcasting, consistency is key with Pinterest. Now, I'm going to ask
Yes.
what may be a dumb question, but I was looking at my pins thinking, okay, some of these are videos, some of these are images, some of these have multiple images. So what's working?
Okay.
Are all of those things pins?
I will say, okay, so this is what I'll say. I feel like when you're first starting, if it feels overwhelming to do any sort of pin, don't do that pin. So for me, video felt overwhelming when I was okay, I'm going to be consistent about pins. So I just did static images on Canva,
Mhm.
like nothing crazy. And then I've slowly added in videos. And this is the other thing I'll say, is it kind of depends on your audience. For me, my audience currently gets the most out of static pins.
Okay.
Those are the ones that usually get the most traction for me, but that could be different for your audience. So you kind of have
Right.
to mess with that and see what's going to be best. I have one of my clients, she has a carousel post that goes out every week on Instagram, and so I just convert that into a pin that is like a carousel but on Pinterest, and it flips the page for you or whatever. You don't have to
Oh,
click
okay.
it. So it's almost a video pin but also a carousel. Pinterest doesn't have a pretty name for them, but that's what it
Right.
is. And for her, she has like more of a personal development podcast. Those do really well for her. So it just kind of depends on your people. So I would say as you're starting, kind of try out some different options and see which ones, first of all, are easy for you to create and don't feel overwhelming. And second, what your people are gravitating toward.
Okay. So then for me, as someone who has multiple podcasts, if I think I can find my people for all of them on Pinterest, should all of those podcasts be on the same account or should I have different accounts?
That's a good question. I would say perfect world that we don't live in, because no one lives in perfect world. I would have a different account for each one, just so you have very specific SEO keywords throughout, on the profile page, in the boards, whatever. But if you're like, that is too much, I cannot handle that, you could have like an overarching profile that has like your name and is like more broad, and then have boards that are specific to each of your podcasts. And you can make that work for sure. Because most Pinterest users do not click on profiles. Like, yeah, most of the time, it's mostly just search and like scrolling on the main Pinterest page. So I feel like you can, if it feels like too much to keep up with two, having
Right.
just boards for each is very doable.
And I would say that there's probably some people listening that have a Pinterest and that, like me, they haven't looked at it in a while. And so I'm thinking, well, I've already created this and have ongoing views for pets. Should I add my podcast stuff there or just start fresh with that? But then also the idea of starting from zero. I have a lot of people say this with podcasts, with YouTube, with anything. Like the idea of starting with zero is kind of overwhelming.
Yeah, I hear you. Truly, that's literally why I created one of my offers, because so many people were like, I don't have time, I don't have capacity. So that's why I created an offer where I would set it up for you, because that's the hardest part, right? Is setting
Right.
that foundation.
Yep.
I would say if that is the case, I think it depends. I think if you want Pinterest to be like your main marketing tool, this is like me. This is specifically for you, Julie. Other listeners, you can listen, but like this is just for
maybe
Julie.
help, but I'm getting no.
I feel like for you, if you want Pinterest to be like your main marketing tool for your podcast, then I would probably make a separate one. It could still be under the same login, but if you're like, this is like a secondary, this is just bonus, I would say stick it under the one you already have with some extra boards.
No, and I think that's probably helpful for someone to hear too, because I had to do this with YouTube. I had both podcasts on one, and someone who knows YouTube said to me, you're confusing the algorithm by pushing pet episodes and then podcast episodes and then this and then. It was hard for me to like unlist all the pet ones because they'd been there longer and I had to move it to a new one and it's slow. But I know now, like, depending on which one I'm in, where my focus is. So how you explain that makes sense to me, because after hearing the success you've had, even just with your email list, that would be enough worth it for me to create a brand new account for my podcasting business, because that is somewhere I'm lagging. And if Pinterest can help me do it, and I learn the system to be able to not only grow that, but my pet one too, then that makes sense, because I'm not doing something separate. I'm just doing them in two places, which I already have to kind of do with two very different podcasts.
It's true. I hear you. So
yeah.
That's
So I know we're getting towards the end of our time. And you've mentioned you have a couple offers. So if someone hears this, what's the easiest way for them to find you, follow you, or even, work with you?
Okay, so like I said, Threads is my favorite. Come be my friend on Threads. I hang out there probably almost every day. It's, if you have never heard of Threads before, it's like Twitter, but Instagram owns it.
Right. So. And it's really easy to go in and out of from Instagram too.
It really is. And okay, this is maybe a bit of a confession. I do not have it on my phone because I got a little bit too obsessive. So I had to take it off of my phone. I just do it on the browser now because it was becoming an obsession. So there's that for you. This is like a Threads fan moment here. But also, you can schedule out your threads. So like because I like to have one thread go out a day. So I schedule out a week's worth of threads, and then I'll pop in there and like if I have like a random thought, I'll throw it into threads too. But like then like my stuff is done for threads in like 20 minutes. It's amazing.
I love that.
I know. It's heaven. Yeah, I get more comments on threads. Yes, apparently this is now a Threads fan account over here.
But I love this because I think it's important for anyone to hear, even like when I talk about what I do with my business, it's not solely this. I also can help people over here and over here. And so what you're saying is, even though you talk a lot about Pinterest right now, and that's probably your main offers, you also know that Threads helps and that people should be checking it out because it could be a good place for them too.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. Threads is my favorite social media. I have a podcast called Friendly Podcast Guide. I have a DIY offer, and then I have a done for you offer for Pinterest. What I will say is I have like a freebie 2-minute checklist to help you figure out if Pinterest is actually a good fit for your podcast, so that before you're like, hey, should I work with you? I can be like, look at this checklist first and see if it will work for you. It's called Is Pinterest Right for Your Podcast Checklist. It's really straightforward. And that will take you 2 minutes to take a look at and be like, oh, actually, yes, I've checked most of these boxes. Yes, Pinterest is a good fit for me. Okay, now I want to hear more from Andy. We don't want to waste your time if it doesn't work.
And we will have Andy's links in. So definitely follow her if you're a Threads person, or even on IG or Pinterest, wherever you hang out. But yeah, do the checklist, because I think sometimes we think this sounds good, but is it really for me?
Right.
And I think all of us are being more careful about our spending, not chasing the next shiny object, which has always been hard for me. I'm a shopper, no matter what it is. But it is important to think about your podcast, your business, your capacity. Now, if hearing all of this, I'm like, well, Pinterest could kind of replace efforts I've made on Facebook and Instagram, because I'm not seeing those conversions. So why wouldn't I go somewhere where people are clicking, where people are using it to find certain things? I think sometimes it's us figuring out where, even though I love Instagram and I like to scroll, that doesn't mean that's where my effort needs to be for my business, because it doesn't convert for me.
Yeah. And that is truly why I made the checklist is because I don't want you wasting your time on Pinterest if it's not a good fit for you. Like the main thing is I've had a couple of people be like, hey, is Pinterest a good idea for my podcast? I'm like, tell me about it. And it's like a daily news podcast. I'm like, no, that's not a good fit for you. That's not where you're not going to find your people because it's not evergreen. Or like mine is an all male like wrestling podcast. No, you're probably not going to do great on Pinterest because 70% of women are on Pinterest while only 30% of men. So I have all of that in the checklist so that you can kind of figure out if it's a good fit for you or not.
And that is so important. And that's going back to what I said in the beginning when we were kind of getting into this, is one of the things I tell people is figure out where your people are. But you have to know who your people are before you can do that. And that sometimes it isn't about either or. Like I say this with audio only versus video, because some people only go to audio only places to listen to podcasts, and other people only go to YouTube to watch or listen to podcasts, right? And so it could be that even if you're successful where you are, Pinterest could be a new pool for you to pull from if you know some of your people are actually there.
It's true. Yeah. Some of my clients they're not stopping their Instagram efforts because it's working, but they've kind of almost like plateaued a little bit with Instagram. So they still want to be there because it's working, but they want to grow more and they're not getting that growth. So Pinterest is something that I can like batch 30 days worth of pins in a day and then not touch it for a month. Yes, please. So I feel like, yes, it doesn't have to be an ad or situation.
Right. And I think that's the other thing. Boy, I know when I did it before I was doing that, the idea of being able to batch and just have it set up. And so you only have to once a month have time to do it, or once a week or whatever it is, like you're doing with Threads. I think that's such an important thing for especially women in business because we're juggling multiple things, you know, kids, for me, animals.
Well, and like hormones. Like I feel like sometimes I'm just like too.
Yes. Can we just like talk about women over 35? We have a capacity for a lot of things, physically, mentally, and just like bandwidth, right?
Yeah.
And knowing we can do something once for a week or a month and come back to it, like a lot of us need that to be able to like, okay, I don't have to check it every day. I don't have to be in there. And, you know, any way we can help other women do that is even that much better.
Yes to everything you just said.
So get the checklist and see if it's right for you, Pinterest-wise. But also check out Andy's podcast, The Friendly Podcast Guide, because I was looking at it and you have some other great episodes like how to grow your email list with your podcast. You had a great one back before the holidays, what to do with your podcast during December when there's so much going on, but people still listen, right? I think you have a lot of great advice out there for people, whether you already have a podcast or you're thinking about starting one. And especially if you're thinking about starting one, figure out where your people are now. Then you can set up these systems as you're launching, and that's even less work you have to do down the line.
It's so true. Thank you. You are so sweet. Everything that Julie just said.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Podcast Your Story. I hope you enjoyed it and got some great tips for your podcast or guesting. Please make sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you are listening or watching this podcast episode. And if you know anyone looking to launch or grow a podcast or become a sought-after podcast guest, please share the podcast with them. Thanks again for being here. I'll be back very soon with another episode. Sending you love from your podcasting mentor,